Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're creating a wrapped flower bouquet directly in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. The color palette is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. We'll be using one free brush for our entire bouquet, and that's my free mono weight brush. And then the lettering is done with my mono marker brush from my Font Lovers Procreate brush set. This week's tutorial is brought to you by Envato Elements, the Netflix of graphic design. Envato Elements is packed with thousands of creative resources, making any project quicker and more professional. My favorite is their Procreate brush section, where you can download and install beautiful brushes and design elements in a snap. They've even generously provided Every Tuesday viewers with a, ready for this, 70% off coupon, so you can try it out for less than $10 a month. It's limited time though, so be sure to hit the link in the video description and grab that insanely valuable coupon and go on your own downloading spree. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas that's 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 dpi. I work in the display P3 color profile, but if you're on an older iPad and don't have access to that, then the default sRGB color profile is perfectly fine. Okay, I've got my brand new canvas ready to go. The first thing we're going to do is set our background color. So tap on your layers, tap on background color, and it's the very last one at the bottom. The next thing we're going to do is sketch out our design. So on this very first layer, we're going to relabel this one sketch. And I like using black for this, and you can use any brush that you want. I've got the mono weight brush selected, but this isn't part of our final artwork, so use whatever brush you're comfortable with. So in order to create the wrapping for our bouquet, I'm just going to draw a line down. It's kind of a kite shape. So I'm not going to keep it perfectly symmetrical. I'm going to make it a little bit off. That way it feels a little more realistic. So let me extend that a little further. I'm going to make this a little wider to make sure we can fit all of our flowers in there. And then this part's going to come down. It's going to be tied down here. And then this part is where it's going to be closed off. So now I can start refining it, and I can erase my crosshairs here. I always spend quite a bit of time on my sketch layer because it just makes everything else go way faster once you have your idea in mind. So this part's going to be part of the wrapping right here. And then I'm going to have one part come down. This part's going to be part of the front wrapping. And then we're going to have the other section that comes down right here. So these ones are going to be different shades. And then we can have our flower stems come down here, and then we'll put our flowers up there. I want it to be a little bit straighter. And I'm going to center this on the canvas. There we go. And now we can start sketching in our flowers. I'm using some really simple flowers for this one. That way it doesn't take forever to get through this tutorial. I'm going to do some really basic, like daisy looking flowers, which if you caught last week's tutorial, then you are well versed in making those. And we're also going to add in some baby's breath and some really simple foliage. So for the daisies, I'm going to have quite a few of these because that's our main flower element. So I'm going to have different sizes too. It's okay to have a few extend beyond the wrapping if they're a little bit taller, if their stem's a little bit longer. It also just adds to the realism factor of it. So I like that too. And then I'll tuck one down here. So this one makes it really obvious that it's behind the wrapping. So these are our daisy elements. I'm going to add in some front foliage pieces. We're going to have some baby's breath coming up here. I'm just giving myself a game plan right now. So if you want to place your items in different places, by all means, there's a lot of freedom to customize this one. For my back foliage elements, I'm going to have 5. So one's going to kind of poke up the middle, but I never put anything directly in the middle. That way your eye doesn't just focus on that one element. So I'm going to have one piece of foliage coming up here. And it's good to have different scales of items. That way everything doesn't just feel all clustered in one note right in the middle. So I like having pieces that are larger and smaller, some that are shorter, some that are taller. So the more variety that you can pack in, even if they're really simple elements, it just makes everything more dynamic. That's basically it. So I think our sketch is pretty good. I'm going to put in some hand lettering down here, but you can use editable text if you'd like, and we can just have a cute little message at the end. I'm going to bring this down a little bit So I will give you a heads up, this is a bit more of an advanced tutorial, so if the pace is too fast at any point in time, the little gear icon in the lower right corner of the YouTube player, if you tap on that, you can change the playback speed and you can slow me down as much as you would like if anything feels too fast along the way. That said, we are going to be using a bunch of layers in this, so layer organization is going to be key. As long as you stay super organized in your layers palette, everything will go really smoothly. Let's reduce the opacity of our sketch layer. This one's always going to remain at the bottom because we're going to draw on top of it. I'm reducing the opacity to 20%. That way there's a faint outline there, but everything I draw on top is going to be final artwork. The next thing I'm going to do is draw the outline of our wrapping, and this is going to be a dark brown color, so I'm going to create a brand new layer, call this one back wrapping, and in the color palette, this very first one, this is going to be behind all the flowers always. So with this one selected, we're going to draw the perimeter of the wrapping. Now we're going to turn off that layer, create a brand new layer right above it. We'll label this one front wrapping. And for this front wrapping layer, we're going to grab the second brown color. And this is going to be this side, and it's going to be both of these two pieces down here. Fill that in, and let's take a quick peek. I'm going to turn the back wrapping layer back on, and I want to make sure that this layer, this front wrapping, extends beyond the back wrapping on all sides. So I'm just going to make sure that that's covered on that area. It's okay if it's up a little bit on this bottom part. I actually like it like that. The next thing we're going to do is create a brand new layer above the back wrapping, but underneath the front wrapping. I'm going to turn off the back wrapping layer again and label this one wrapping. And this one's going to be that lightest brown color right here. And then let's turn everything on and make sure that edge is covered. So you want to make sure you're on the right layer when you do this. And I always like turning my sketch layer off too, just to make sure that feels good without the sketch being there. So you can add your string on right now. We can do that. Let's create a brand new layer up at the very top, label this one string. And I'm going to grab the darkest color right here at the very end. I'm going to reduce my size down to 2%. And this one's just a bunch of little lines, and I like crossing them over, drawing them straight across so it looks like a messy tie. And even if you want to come in super close and make it look like it's wrapping around, you can do that too. And then I'll give it some loops down here. There we go. I feel like I need a little more string because this is pretty full bouquet. The next thing we're going to do is start drawing our flowers. So our flowers are going to sit on top of the back wrapping, but behind the front wrapping. So all of them need to exist above the back wrapping layer and underneath the front wrapping layers. So right here, I'm going to create a brand new layer. This one I'm going to label centers, and I'm going to turn off my back wrapping layer. That way I can see my sketch layer where all my flowers were. So turn that one off, turn your sketch layer back on. On your centers layer, make sure that's selected. I'm going to grab this first color of the second row. It's kind of a rust color, and I'm going to draw in the centers of these flowers. Now there's two ways that you can do this. With the newest version of Procreate, you can use a selection. So up here you can hit select. If you have freehand selected and color fill turned on, you can draw your centers and then just tap on the little gray circle and you can come around and draw all your centers like that. I don't like this method personally because when I draw, I have my hand on the glass pretty often. And when I have my hand on the glass, it can pick up my hand being there way more than with the brush, and it just drives me crazy. I always feel like I have to draw like this. So me personally, I like doing it the long way by using the brush, the traditional way, creating an outline and then filling it in. But if you like this way quicker, or you've got a sleeve for your hand, I don't like wearing those either, then by all means you can do it that way. But my personal preference is just drawing it the old-fashioned way. So that is the reason for that, in case anybody is wondering. Okay, once you have your centers, now we're going to draw our petals. So create a brand new layer, drag it underneath your centers layer, label this one petals. I'm going to grab my darkest pink color. And once again, you can use the selection method if you want. I'm going to draw these traditionally. I've got all my petals drawn. Now I'm going to add in some petal details. So right above the petals layer, label this one petal details. And I'm going to grab the lightest pink color. So it's the third one in the second row. Reduce your size down to 2% and just draw in some really simple lines. I'm going to take a step back and just see how the scale feels right now before we go too much further. So I'm going to turn on the back wrapping, turn off my sketch layer, zoom out a little bit. I think I want all these flowers to just be nudged up just slightly. So I'm going to select all of these and then just move them up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to add in some stems to these. So create a brand new layer right above the back wrapping. This one's going to be labeled stems. I'm going to grab my second green color right here. And the size of this is 4%, and I'm just going to draw some stems. The next thing I'm going to do is add in my background foliage. That way I can fill in everything else. And don't worry about down here. We're going to add the stems down here afterwards. So let's group all of our pink flower elements together. And I'm going to leave my sketch layer off for now because I've got a lot of work already done that's finished, so I can start basing my decisions off of what my final artwork looks like now instead of the sketch that's been kind of adjusted since we first began. So I'm going to create a brand new layer above my back wrapping but underneath my pink flowers because these elements are all going to be behind my pink flowers. So create a brand new layer, and this one's going to be called back foliage, and this one's going to be this darker green color. I'm going to reduce the size down to 3%, and I'm going to have 5 of these. So for the leaves on these, they're going to be that pointed oval shape. You can use the selection method again for drawing and filling these in. These ones are going to get larger as you go down. Okay, once you have your back foliage, now we can pop in our baby's breath, which is just another really subtle floral element to tie everything together. So our baby's breath is going to be above our back foliage, but beneath our pink flowers. So with back foliage selected, create a brand new layer. This one will be called Baby's Breath. And for this one, we're going to grab our white color. I'm going to increase the size up to 7%. And wherever I feel like I could add a little bit of something extra, I'm going to add in some front foliage right here. So I'm going to leave that area open, but around the outside, so like right here, there's a nice gap, right here, and right here, and maybe even right here, I've got the opportunity to add that baby's breath. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to put in a few dots, these little dot clusters. Now we're going to create the baby's breath stem. So I'm going to create a brand new layer right underneath it, label this one stem, and I'm going to grab the second green color right here. I'm going to use a 2% brush size for this. So I grab one of the bottom dots and draw a line straight down from it, and then I can draw stems that branch off of that. Now we can draw in that front foliage. So let's group the baby's breath together with the stem of it. Label this one baby's breath. So for the front foliage, this is going to sit on top of the pink flowers. So tap on the pink flowers layer, create a brand new layer right above it. This one's going to be called front foliage. And this is going to be really simple. These are just going to be some long leaves that are poking up in the front. And we're going to make them the lightest green color right here. So I want some overlapping to happen because that's going to help me convey depth right here. So now that I have my front foliage done, now we can start adding depth to everything. And this is the really fun part for me. So we'll start with the front foliage because that's pretty easy. We have to make sure we change our selection settings. So if you were using the color fill down here as a selection, you have to make sure that this is toggled off before we continue on. So I'm going to keep this as freehand and add. So once you make sure you have these settings applied, we can come up to our layers, come to your front foliage layer, tap in the layer thumbnail and choose select. You're going to select the darkest color right here because that's going to be our shadow color. Come back to your layers, select the pink flowers group, create a brand new layer right above it, and then fill this layer. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose fill layer. So essentially what we did is we created this exact element, the front foliage, only we changed its color. So you can see, and it's right behind it. So now when we apply a Gaussian blur, it's going to create a shadow naturally. So with this shadow selected, I'm going to come over to my magic wand, choose Gaussian blur, hit layer, and then just drag it until you're happy with how much shadow it's creating. So I'm coming up to, let's go all the way up to 4%. And I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, so the color of it blends more naturally with the elements that are behind it. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity because it's a little strong. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to like 50%. So the next thing we want to do is add some dimension for our wrapping. And for this one, there's actually a really easy way you can do it. I'm going to first create the dimension created by this edge right here, the light colored edge. So I need to come up to wrapping. Let's create a brand new layer right above it. I'm going to grab my brush and I'm going to increase its size up to 10%. And I'm just going to draw a line along that edge. And now I'm going to apply a Gaussian blur to this line. So hit your magic wand, choose Gaussian blur, layer, and then drag this up. And I'm going to drag this, we'll go to like 4% here. And then we're going to apply a multiply blend mode. So tap on the little N, drag this up to multiply, and we're going to drag this underneath the wrapping layer. I drew it on top so you could see exactly where it was going to be positioned. And now we can move this right underneath it. You can see that shadow that's created right there. That's immediately giving us depth. And then you can adjust the opacity of that layer too. I'm just going to bring this down a smidge, like 70%. So the next thing we're going to do is the exact same thing, only along this edge. So I'm going to start up here and have this come all the way down this edge too and stop when I hit the string. So I'm going to come to my front wrapping, create a brand new layer. I'm going to draw it on top of it and then move it underneath it. That way you can see the positioning. It just makes it a lot easier that way. So I've got my brush selected. So now I'm going to apply the Gaussian blur to it. We can apply a multiply blend mode, drag this underneath the front wrapping layer, and now we can reduce the opacity of it. And then down here, we're going to add in the shadow here. So once again, we're going to draw on top of the front wrapping layer. Grab your brush, and I'm only going to do the inside here. Change the blend mode to multiply, reduce the opacity, I'm down to 40%, and then drag it underneath. So the last things we need to do is add some stems to the bottom, add a little tag with a heart, and then finish it off with some hand lettering. So really easy stuff now. So for the stems, all you have to do is come right above the back wrapping layer. We can just label this one bottom stems. So these three greens, I'm just going to switch between with different weights of my brush. The secret to this one is you actually don't want to put as many stems down here as you have elements up here because it'll just look crazy down here. So just a few stems is really all you need for the eye to interpret it as, oh, those are the stems of those flowers up there. For our tag needs to go underneath the string but on top of everything else. So if I select my front wrapping, create a brand new layer, I'll label this one tag. This one's going to be white, so grab your white. I'm just going to draw a tag shape right here. I think I'm going to rotate this a little bit. And I think it needs to be a little bit bigger too. Add a little extra length to it. Okay, and then right on top of that tag, I'm going to put a heart. So I'm going to make it my dark pink for this. And now we can add in our hand lettering. So up at the very top, create a brand new layer, label this one lettering, and change to the rust color. And I'm going to head into my Font Lovers brush set. And down here is my mono marker brush. And I like turning on my guides for this because I have a tendency to write uphill. So if you hit your wrench and go to Canvas and tap on drawing guide, then the default drawing guide, that's all I use. I just want to make sure that everything I write is on the same baseline. So write your message out, or you can use editable text if you'd like to do that too. I'm going to increase my size up to 10%. Okay, once you have your lettering the way you like it, tap on your wrench, turn off your drawing guide, and you're all set. So that's how to create a wrapped flower bouquet directly in Procreate. Once again, links to everything mentioned in this tutorial, including the free Mono 8 brush, the free color palette, and the Mono marker brush, are right in the video description. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.